right, let's just rip off the Band-Aid, shall we? How often do you find yourself saying yes when you really want to say no? Are sure and okay your default answers when someone asks you to do something, help with something, go somewhere, whether you have time to or want to or not? Do you feel guilty when you say no and worry that you're disappointing someone, that you're going to make someone unhappy? And if you're in the middle of mentally figuring out how you're going to fit that thing you volunteered for in around regular life commitments while listening to this, we really do need to talk. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're not unique. You're not unusual, and you're definitely not alone. But somewhere along the way, you learned that tying your self-worth to the approval of others, being agreeable, helpful, easygoing, was just the price of belonging. And you keep paying it, even though the dividends are often not shared equally. We've talked about self-worth and boundaries quite a few times around here before. And this episode isn't about setting boundaries. Even though it's kind of connected, we're going to wade a little deeper into understanding why saying no can feel so unsafe in the first place and how we might have gotten here. Because multi-generational people-pleasing isn't a personality flaw or a failing. It's a learned survival strategy that often gets passed down to us through families, cultures, workplaces, relationships. And once we begin to peel back the layers to figure out where it came from, well then, my friends, we can begin to work on teaching ourselves to stop self-sacrificing our happiness for other people's comfort. Can I get a hell yeah? Let's dig into that. Life doesn't give us a map for healing and growth. Yeah, it's messy, uncomfortable, and not for the faint of heart. I'm Johanna LaRue, and this is Transformative Journeys, a podcast about resilience, self-discovery, and learning how to rebuild something meaningful after everything changes. We talk neuroscience, real life, unlearning, and all the messy stuff in between. New episodes drop every other Monday, and there's bonus content on YouTube if you want more in the meantime. Welcome back to Transformative Journeys with Johanna. I'm your host, Johanna, and I am a recovering yes woman. And once again, I'm going to expose one of my inner demons in the hopes that what I've learned or am still learning might help you too. I know what it's like to automatically say yes and then find myself in over my head because I've got way too much on my plate. I know what it's like to be the person, the one everyone calls when they need help, they need something done, they need a ride, they need to vent. And the truth is, I spent decades of my life, half a century in fact, shaping who I thought I was around other people's needs, expectations, and their emotions. Help first and rearrange the rest of my life to make things easier for everyone else. Yep, that was my motto. Then menopause came knocking on my door. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping. I was having hot flashes that made me feel like I was going to vomit. Brain fog that felt like I was trying to think through pea soup. I felt like not just my body was betraying me, but my brain and my emotions were too. Menopause. As I heard it framed really recently at a workshop I was attending, it's a time when our estrogen, which is our nurturing hormone, pretty much disappears, along with our give a fucks. But boy, was it a wake-up call for me. One that started making me reevaluate the priorities in my life and finally ask myself, what is the cost of all this helping to me? And I'll be honest, because my caring hormones were seriously depleted, I started taking a look around at all the people in my life, friends, coworkers, yes, even family, and started to consider how many times I'd been the person for everyone else against how many times other people had been the person for me. Because who the hell was filling my cup while I was constantly pouring out of it for everyone else? And just to be perfectly clear here, nobody forced me into that role. Nobody ever said to me, if you don't do this, I won't like you or I won't love you. Nope. I had simply spent my whole life scanning the environment, so to speak, for perceived disappointment, for external validation, to ensure everyone thought that I was a good person. And the messages telling me what a good person was, those came from everywhere. From growing up in a family who loved me, but where approval could feel very conditional. From relationships where being agreeable meant peace and harmony, and not meant fights, friction, tension, or conflict because I was being unreasonable. From a society that had very clear messages around what a nice girl looks like, easygoing, helpful, accommodating, from work environments where it was acceptable for someone in a higher position to speak down to me or have unrealistic expectations around my time and my workload. But God forbid I showed up impatient because I was overwhelmed, over exhausted, or was dealing with my own personal stuff. But ultimately, thinking I was disappointing people just simply felt unbearable. Does any of that contain any seeds of truth for you? And maybe you're saying, hey, but what's wrong with having a big heart, with wanting to help people, with wanting to make people happy? Well, on the surface, people-pleasing might seem like a normal, positive, and completely harmless trait, but it's not about simple kindness and helpfulness. People-pleasing isn't the same thing as kindness. When you pull back the curtain, it goes deeper than that. It's about constantly striving to fulfill other people's wishes, put other people's comfort and happiness ahead of your own, and giving your time, energy, and resources without considering your own needs. It's about bending over backwards to accommodate others, even if it leaves you burned out, exhausted, and harms your own mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So it shows up in behaviors like finding it hard to say no and overcommitting to plans or activities or responsibilities because feeling no feels unbearable. It feels like staying in conversations you don't have the time, energy, or bandwidth to participate in. Behaviors like apologizing constantly for your infrequent no's, for your feelings, for not behaving the way someone wants you to, for pretending to agree with someone else to keep them happy. It feels like feeling pressured to be friendly and cheerful all the time, or saying you're fine when you're not. Behaviors like fearing other people's anger or conflict, or even changing your personality based on who you're with. And just feeling anxiety all the time about what other people think. And for me, as my estrogen and my give-a-fucks diminished, so did my desire to continue doing and being all of those things. So I think it's time for a bit of a neuroscience break, because I needed to really understand here, and of course, I always do a neuroscience break. Wanting other people to like us and approve of us to some degree or another is just a hardwired human trait. We're biologically wired for belonging and connection. Our brains evolved in small tribes where social exclusion had some serious consequences. So our nervous systems developed a really powerful sensitivity to social approval and rejection. We can't escape it, but hopefully understanding what's going on in our brains can start to help loosen its grip for some of the people-pleasing patterns that are quietly costing us our own well-being. So let's take a peek a little further behind that curtain. So while the causes behind exhibiting people-pleasing behaviors vary from person to person, and because everyone's background's different, as far as our brain goes, it's all linked to that primordial need for belonging and social safety. Neuroscientists and psychologists have established that it stems from what are called attachment patterns, from nervous system conditioning, and from the way our brains detect and process perceived threats. So keeping in mind, once again, that I'm not an IST. I'm not a scientist, psychologist, therapist, or even a licensed counselor. I'm going to try to explain what I understand in layman's terms. Like I said, our brains prioritize ensuring that we feel belonging and social safety within what it sees as our tribe. So our immediate, as well as to a lesser degree, our extended social group. That includes our family, of course, our friends, our coworkers and bosses, and the people that we interact with on a regular basis. And this circle of influence has become a bit blurred by social media, with us sometimes mentally developing an association between our friends lists and our followers and our real friends and social group. But for today's conversation, I'm going to stick to the people we have real physical and emotional proximity to. So social rejection, which is when someone disapproves of you or outright doesn't like you, is perceived by our brain as a threat to our acceptance and our place within our tribe, so our social circle. It's perceived as potential for rejection and ultimately a threat to our safety. After all, a few thousand years ago, getting kicked out of your tribe meant almost certain death. And research from neuroscientists has shown that social rejection actually activates the same neural pathways in our brain as physical pain. So there's a reason why we use the word hurt to describe both emotional and physical pain. It's not a metaphor, it's brain science. For a variety of reasons, mostly social conditioning and of some sort or another, for some people, no registers as a threat rather than simply a normal and neutral response. Maybe approval or love was inconsistent or conditional when we were growing up. Maybe conflict felt unsafe in a home or a relationship. Maybe being the person maintaining social harmony was linked to our value. Whatever it was at the root of our approval button, our nervous system associated being agreeable with keeping us safe. And to pull back another layer here, receiving social approval also gives us a shot of dopamine. And our brains absolutely love dopamine. When someone praises or approves of our yes, of us being accommodating, when we allow them to plow through our boundaries, our freaking brain treats that like a reward. So what do? We keep on seeking that reward, reinforcing that behavior. And fear of rejection activates our amygdala, the seat of our fight or flight response, as well as something not formally categorized in basic neuroscience models, but widely discussed in trauma literature. And it's something called the fawn response, which is when we appease others to keep the peace in order to prevent stress in a relationship or an environment. And when our brain anticipates that we're going to disappoint someone, our stress hormones like cortisol spike, creating that ick feeling that we get. So saying yes is kind of a way to avoid that short-term discomfort of the ick at the cost of worse discomfort later when we're overwhelmed and burnt out. And here's where things get even more interesting. And this piece is important for this conversation. People-pleasing is often intergenerational. Not because our parents or our grandparents meant to intentionally pass it down. It's because as children, we learn by observing and absorbing, watching how the adults in our lives interact, unconsciously noting when needs were minimized for the benefit of others, seeing when helping others was equated with being good, feeling when harmony and peace was prioritized over honest and realistic expectations. And we also develop people-pleasing as a coping mechanism if we were raised in environments where affection or acceptance was conditional on meeting certain expectations. And Marcia Sirota, who is a board-certified psychiatrist practicing in Toronto, Ontario, here in Canada, is the author of Be Kind, Not Nice, How to Stop People-Pleasing, and the host of the Ruthless Compassion podcast. And she says, because children take everything personally, they believe that if they're being mistreated, it's because they haven't been good enough. Being good as an adult makes them believe incorrectly that they have some control in their life. They think they'll be rewarded for their goodness and that it will protect them from harm. This kind of shit doesn't get handed to us in the How to Be an Adult book. It just quietly settles in and lives in our nervous systems. So it's not just a communication issue for us, it's an internal regulation and feedback loop. No triggers guilt, guilt triggers anxiety, anxiety triggers self-doubt, which leads to overgiving, justifying, over-explaining, and now we've agreed to something we didn't want to do again. And when the approval comes, dopamine, behavior reinforced. All right. Feeling a little called out right now? Sorry, not sorry. But as a peace token, let me tell you about my toolkit page. I have created free tools to support resilience, from grief and mindfulness to self-care and breaking self-sabotage patterns. They're designed to help you work at your own pace and in your own way. And you can grab them all for free at transformativejourneys.ca, or just scroll down to the link in the show notes, because we may be on different paths at different times, but we're all on this journey together. All right, back to the episode. So before we get into some strategies that can help us rein in our people-pleasing patterns, I want to tie in something that I've talked about before. A not so gentle reframe that changed everything for me. And it's that other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Not because you're not a caring person, not because you don't value kindness, because it's not your job to carry what isn't yours. Mel Robbins' let them concept is simple, powerful, and sometimes uncomfortable. Let people feel disappointed. Let people react. Let people manage their own emotions, because it's not your job to prevent discomfort for others. It's not your job to manage their emotions, their disappointment, or their reactions. It is your job to manage yours and not quietly accept chronic discomfort in order to keep everyone in your circle happy. Something else that I've had to work hard at internalizing is that saying no isn't rejection. It's not rejection when someone says it to me, and it's not rejection when I say it to someone else. I say no now with the understanding and acceptance that it's part of how I protect my energy, my peace, what I truly value in life, my mental, emotional, and physical well-being, my relationships, and the things that are truly important in my life. And do you know what else I've learned? And this one's huge. No is absolutely a complete sentence. And if I'm feeling polite, I can add a thank you to the end of it. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to make excuses. I damn well don't have to tiptoe around to make someone else comfortable. I usually don't have to be a bitch about it, but occasionally I do have to pull on my over-the-knee 6-inch spike-heeled bitch boots. And I'm learning that some people are going to think I'm a bitch anyways. So go ahead. Because 9 times out of 10, if I gave them an ounce of wiggle room to argue their case about why I should do the thing, they wouldn't give a crap about my comfort and my needs. Remember, and this is super important, the only people who really fight or disrespect your boundaries are the ones who benefited the most from them when you didn't have any. Let that land. But do you know what else is really cool? When we learn to say no with kindness but firmness, we're teaching other people that it's safe to say no too. And I'm going to hurl another grenade of truth at you. You might think you're feeling guilty when you disappoint someone or making them sit with their own discomfort. But that's not actually real guilt, because you haven't done anything wrong. And no, just because someone's feelings are hurt when you say no does not mean you've done something wrong. Other people's emotions are not your responsibility, remember? So try giving that feeling another name. Call it tension, call it awkwardness, call it an unfamiliar feeling, call it your little bit of nausea, call it whatever you want. Just stop calling it guilt and start building a different relationship with it. All right, now that we've got the theory in place, let's work on some strategies to help you start to break the cycle of people pleasing and the habit of saying yes to everything. So first of all, moving forward, I want you to really start paying attention and noticing when you're people pleasing. When someone asks you to do something, before you answer, pause and check in with yourself. According to a study titled, let me read this, Humans Optimize Decision-Making by Delaying Decision Onset, done by Columbia University in 2014, it was estimated that the human brain needs only around 50 milliseconds on average to shift from autopilot to intentional choice. And the research suggested that those micro pauses can improve our decision-making accuracy. So use that 50 milliseconds to ask yourself things like, do I need to do this? Do I want to do this? How am I going to feel after saying yes? And when it comes time to actually doing the thing, am I about to say yes because I really mean it? Or am I saying yes because I'm not comfortable with making someone else uncomfortable? You'll know the answer. You'll likely already be feeling it in your body. That's not just a feeling. That's data that you need to start listening to. Learn how to be okay with your own discomfort. Trust me, it'll get less uncomfortable the more you learn to lean into it and to honor it. If you're not sure after answering those questions, or if you're super uncomfortable with saying no right that minute, respond with, let me get back to you on that. It can be really hard with all of the instant messaging we have right now, because we all feel like we need to provide instant answers to everything. And we were seriously just having a conversation at my work around this problem, because it is a problem and it's getting worse because it hadn't been addressed until recently. But the truth is, unless someone's been in a horrific accident or this is a matter of life or death, there really is seldom real urgency to you answering. Let it percolate. Give yourself some time to listen to your gut, some time to really determine if what they want is realistic for you, and maybe a bit of time to work up the courage to say no. And when you do respond, think about how you're going to do it. How do I make it clear and not be evasive? And one of my favorite things that Brené Brown says, among many of my favorite things that Brené Brown says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Learn to use language that reflects your needs, preferences, priorities, and values. But don't apologize for your no. Go ahead and delay giving a direct yes or no answer. Just do it without making excuses and without leaving any doubt that it's neither a yes nor a no. Things like, let me think about that. Or, I don't know yet. I'm busy right now, but let me get back to you about it. Or when do you need to know by? And start paying attention to who respects your no and who doesn't. That's the more important data. Saying no, for those of us not used to it, is a skill. And especially doing it without a whole pile of excuses attached to the back end of it. So start practicing your one sentence no. And I'm serious here. Come up with a simple, direct response, maybe even one of the ones I just gave you, and literally practice it daily so it feels comfortable coming out of your mouth. Even try practicing it in front of a mirror and looking yourself in the eye and saying it. Go ahead, like I really do talk to myself all the time. And doing that can help make you feel more comfortable and confident saying it. Write it down somewhere that you can look at it every day. Stick it to your computer screen or your bathroom mirror or your refrigerator door, or on a Post-it note that you can move from page to page every day in your day planner. This next part takes a bit of work, and I'll admit it takes a bit of getting used to. While you're pausing, remember to tune into your discomfort. If you're feeling discomfort physically or emotionally around the request, listen to that and honor it. Our gut feelings are often right. And I'm going to say it again. We need to stop ignoring them just to try to prevent other people from being uncomfortable. Expect that discomfort, theirs as well as yours, but don't automatically interpret it as danger. You're never going to be able to please everyone all the time. Wasting your very finite mental and emotional resources trying to make everyone friggin' happy is a recipe for disaster. Even if you spend all of your time and resources smiling and giving it your all, there will still be some people who are unhappy regardless of how hard you tried. And let me give you a little mental slap in the face, because the truth is that this one is really going to sting for some of you. Sometimes we have the mistaken belief that we are gaining everyone's respect by being a people pleaser. The truth is that we often lose the respect of others because we don't stand up for ourselves. Ouch, right? Take some time to consider what's important to you, because you are important, not just what you can do for other people. And not knowing what really matters to you can put you at a real disadvantage when it comes time to prioritize your time and your energy. It makes it much easier for people to pressure you to give in to their requests if you don't even know what matters to you and what doesn't. So seriously, sit down and make a list. And it's time to start working on validating that internally. What matters to me is important. And what is important to me takes priority over what someone else just wants. Realize your own self-worth and stop betraying yourself by compromising your values. Try switching your helping verb. Yes, and I had to look that, the proper grammatical term for this, because I couldn't remember it from public school. Switch out I can't with I don't. And this is another fun fact from another study published in the Journal of Consumer Research. And it was saying that saying I don't instead of I can't allowed the participants to feel more comfortable declining unwanted commitments. Apparently, starting with I can't made boundary pushers more likely to continue to pressure you, whereas saying I don't established clearer boundaries and gave the appearance of the person being more confident. If all this sounds kind of intimidating or scary, start small. Saying no to small requests can help build your confidence. Gradual change is much easier to implement and will likely see a little less resistance from the worst of your boundary pushers. So set the bar low at first so you know you can clear it. Start by setting small, easier to maintain boundaries. And I'm going to do an episode on micro boundaries a little later this spring. But practice setting those small boundaries and keeping them. And remember that boundaries aren't meant just to keep certain people out of your life. They're meant to keep what's important in your life firmly, safely, and sanely in place. Things like not answering texts after a certain time. Letting a call go to voicemail if you know it's going to tax your energy or your bandwidth. Setting a time limit on requests. Establishing the time that it's convenient for you when you do agree to something and stating firmly that that is the only time that you have available. And as you build some confidence, you can begin to set that bar a little higher and a little higher by extending your boundaries to more significant situations. All right, you know the drill. If you have a notebook or paper handy, here's a reflection prompt that you can journal out or you can just take on your next walk with you. As always, make it kind, but be honest. Be self-compassionate. What am I afraid of will happen if I say no? And is that fear still true today? This week, I talked about people pleasing, how and why we do it, and how we can start to build the capacity and the courage to begin saying yes to what we want to do and saying no to what we won't, around our own needs and around our own priorities. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Rewiring your neural pathways is absolutely doable. It's just going to require some time and some inner work. You're not being selfish for choosing yourself. Setting limits is not being unkind to anyone. And you have every right to step out of that role that you never actually auditioned for or signed up to play. Just because people pleasing helped you feel safe and accepted at some point doesn't mean you have to carry that strategy forward forever. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Come say hi to me on Instagram at transformativejourneys.johanna or visit my website. Say hi to me there. Did you know I do an enhanced version of this podcast on YouTube? On-screen prompts, beautiful visuals, and a more immersive experience. So head over to my YouTube channel, Transformative Journeys, to check it out. If you've got an idea you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a message and you might see it in a future episode. And last, I know everybody asks this. I know everybody wants you to push the buttons, the like, subscribe, and all the things, but it really does help my show get noticed. So I will make you a deal. You tap it, and I promise I'll keep dropping the best of what's in my heart and my slightly sarcastic soul so that we can keep learning together. Until next time, this is Johanna reminding you that it doesn't matter if you fall. What matters is how well you bounce. This is Transformative Journeys. See you next time. Your support helps me keep creating free tools and honest conversations. Because let's be real, even when you love what you're doing, sometimes it takes a whole lot of metaphorical duct tape to hold it all together. If you'd like to toss a little love into the duct tape fund, you can now support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. Hey, just a disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health expert. I'm not a licensed counselor or therapist, just a human with a mic and a story of growth and resilience. No degree, no fancy letters after my name. I'm a full-time student at the School of Hard Knocks, University of Life, where I figure I'll graduate when I take my last breath. In other words, I'm just Johanna, a fellow human being on my journey through this thing called life, and your guide on this transformative journey.